mostly basic science. Doing mostly like basic science research, not really knowing what I wanted to do. So I went into senior fall and started looking at, honestly, I just kind of started looking at careers in general, everything from being an astronaut to being a teacher, and just started crossing things off a list. And yeah, I got down to consultant, which is a really broad category of a career, and thought it would be a cool way to, try out business, for lack of a better term, and do it in a field that I liked, which was healthcare at the time. So anyways, I scrambled that senior fall. I was lucky enough to get an offer at a small boutique firm named Artisan Healthcare Consulting, which we've had a couple other Bowdoin kids that I've helped recruit land there now. And yeah, kind of led me through there.
I love, and again, your pathway, right? It's so you don't have to start in one thing and go to another, which is so important to remember. All right, so let's talk a little more about the daily work. What does that look like? Yeah,
definitely. And I'm by no means, I guess, like any answers to these questions. Consulting's so huge, and I've only been involved in kind of the boutique side, which are smaller consulting firms, not the big ones that you may have heard of, like McKinsey or BCG or Bain or something. So definitely take my experience with a grain of salt. But really, like every day is just a mix of solo work and meetings, no matter really what level you're at. When you start out as an analyst in any role, it's mostly solo work where you're being assigned a task, whether it's research, whether it's quantitative analysis. You're doing it, reporting back to your manager, and being involved with like the team calls with the clients, but you're not really saying anything or presenting and stuff like that. As you kind of grow the ranks over the years, you start to manage people, you start to manage workflows, and your days get much more busy and just kind of more meetings. So I personally love the balance. It's nice to not have a job, that's not all just typing away at my computer all day. But also it's nice to have some breaks in the day, particularly working remote or partially remote how I work. So, I can have some chill times during the day as well.
So when you say you have a lot of solo work, do the projects vary? Do you have any sort of control over what you get to work on? Are you, giving, is it just like, here's the data and the research, go ahead and make decisions, or do you get to at least provide some suggestions? Like anything else you can provide context there?
Definitely, yeah. Cool part about consulting is pretty much across the board. When you're starting at an analyst, particularly small companies, at least how I've been at, my companies that I've both worked at have been pretty small, you're handed definitely a lot of responsibility in terms of analysis. So people will ask questions, they might give you data, you might just have Google and, looking at academic papers or other resources specific to the industry. But at the end of the day, your job as a consultant is to put all that research together and give a recommendation. And so that's what you do really to your managers, and they really trust your thinking and your process and come back to you with questions. But what you deliver to the client a lot of times is exactly what the analysts have been really the ones that know the numbers and know what's going on at a more granular level. So when you are starting to manage and stuff, you have to trust the people under you to do that. So yeah.
Great. All right, let's get to two more questions. The next one is, what's the main difference between healthcare consulting and now you're more doing sustainability consulting? Can you talk about those differences?
Yeah, totally. I guess when people come to me and ask about consulting, because that's only what I've been working in since graduation, there's kind of, as I mentioned, those big firms that do a whole lot of different things, and they have departments within them that are focused on sustainability. For example, EY might have a sustainability branch there. Everyone there works on it. But a lot of times people come into those roles as generalists. The other side of consulting is kind of maybe what you call boutique firms. This is at least my understanding. And these firms are smaller, a little bit of a different business model, but they focus on normally a particular topic and have experts in it. So healthcare consulting and sustainability consulting, the two firms that I've worked at are both boutique firms. They're smaller, run by people that, have been working in this space for a long time, but didn't come in as kind of a generalist and were just assigned projects more at random. They came in knowing that they're going to be working just on healthcare related projects or sustainability projects. With that being said, the difference, to get get to your question, difference between healthcare consulting and sustainability consulting is really just what both aim to do. So healthcare consulting, I'd say kind of that one sentence summary, at least most of the firms you'll hear people from Bowdoin going to and stuff, really helps pharmaceutical companies or other biotechs and drug developers kind of develop strategies around marketing their drugs, getting them to patients, and choosing which ones to develop diseases in. Pretty much helping pharmaceutical companies increase their profits in some way, to be honest, but also through that helping patients, in particular with diseases like cancer and other rare diseases. Sustainability consulting, on the contrary, is really just making companies more sustainable. And there's, it's a more complex sphere than that, but that's the simple one-line answer for it.
All right, so it definitely has to do with the projects that you're working on, the types of clients you're supporting, and the goals that they're trying to achieve. So it's just like a range of things. Okay. All right, one last question for me, and then I'm opening it up to you. So get ready. What tips could you provide to students looking to gain relevant experiences and skills needed to be competitive for internships and jobs in consulting, right? There's no consulting major. So what do you suggest?
Yeah, great question. One I was definitely thinking a lot about while I was scrambling, what I wish I had done earlier on in school. And no worries if you're scrambling too. I'd say a couple things. So first, for me, I found it pretty challenging during the academic year to get anything done in terms of job stuff. I could do the bare minimum. I could do some introductory calls, which is really the most helpful thing I found ever, is just hitting people up on LinkedIn from Bowdoin and others and just saying, hey, can I talk? I'm interested in what you do, because it gives you a broad perspective of what they're actually doing. So when you get to interviews, you can talk about it. But that being said, academic year is so busy, really using your breaks, using winter break in particular, because at least if it's still the same, it's like 6 weeks or something pretty big. After the holidays, you have some time. Definitely being efficient with that time is really, really helpful. In terms of more like resume building stuff, not just, setting out time to work. The big thing that I saw when interviewing candidates is, particularly at like a boutique firm, where, the big firms, I'm less familiar with them. They might be more like banking, where junior internships are important to get you in the door, and you've got to be building towards that. But for boutique ones, people come from a variety of backgrounds. So if you can kind of present any work that you've done for any job in the way of consulting, which is really just have a problem, research how to solve it, present out how to solve it, and then actually solve it. If you can do that for any job that you do, you can turn anything into consulting. I worked at like a hospital my freshman year, and there was some data problem that I saw. And so I asked if that could be my project for the summer. And anyways, I researched it, put together a big presentation, presented to doctors, and helped fix it. And that was the experience that everyone asked me about when I was applying for my first consulting job, because that really was what consulting was at a broad level. So yeah, don't need like, a really flashy consulting internship. You can do it on any job that you have, and then definitely try to be efficient with your time, not during the academic year, because you guys are just so slammed with work and everything.
All right, thank you so much. It's a good primer. We lay the foundation. What questions do you have from here? Again, you can raise your virtual hand, and I'll just start calling people, or you can type in the chat. Go from there. Yeah, Lulu, go ahead. And then Lulu, and then is it Perrin? Okay, great, perfect. Go ahead.
I was wondering like what the coolest or one of your like recent projects at in sustainability consulting was, and like how you went about doing it, kind of.
Yeah, definitely. And honestly, a big part of talking to all of you is to kind of make people that might not know that these kind of fields exist, make them aware of it. So yeah, one of my clients, really we've done kind of a similar thing for a lot of my first clients, because I've only been at this firm like 4 months now. It was definitely a career pivot for me. But a lot of our clients are trying to reach net zero for their carbon emissions. And really the defined way to do that is to set out their greenhouse gases, lay them all on the table, have a huge accounting inventory for them, and then set these targets. There's a specific way that you set net zero targets that's kind of approved by the scientific community. And we do a lot of work modeling to show exactly how companies can actually get there. How are you going to reduce your, emissions? Are you going to buy more renewable energy, purchase RECs, things like that. But about a week ago, for the first project that I was actually staffed on here, where we set out that target and did all that work, they finally submitted to this regulatory body to pretty much say, this is our target and we're going to follow it. So the hard stuff kind of follows, but pretty cool to have a commitment from, a huge Fortune, 500 or something company to go net zero and see that come to fruition.
Karen, go ahead.
I've heard from a lot of different people. First of all, thanks for being here. But yeah, I've heard from a lot of different friends and people that have gone into consulting, like a really broad range of like, I'm overworked and I work like 80 hours a week, to like, I don't have enough to do because they overhired. And I'm wondering, like, is that just like a company to company thing, or what has been your experience in like the work-life balance? And then along with that, like, how do you choose how do you kind of get the lay of the land with which ones are better and will not make you, work 80 hours a week?
Yeah, no, fantastic question. And I've had different experiences at the two firms for sure. Okay, yeah, I guess first, yes, there totally is a variety. And you'll see it because so many people, a lot of your friends will go into consulting. You'll see that huge variety in some people's days versus others. At my last firm, especially when I was kind of tailing off, I was working a couple hours a day. It was pretty ridiculous. And then since being here, I've definitely been pushed to work more, up to like, estimating hours is tough, but working longer days and definitely not stopping at 5. So I'd say, first of all, boutique firms in general, I think, have a reputation, and this is not true across all of them, but in general have a reputation of not grinding you to the bone as much as somewhere like a McKinsey or Bain does. The business model, I guess, at a smaller firm is, if you've only got 30 people, retaining that talent and training those people costs a lot of resources. So you really don't want people to just get burnt out and quit. Some of the bigger firms, you can kind of just cycle through people easier. So they may burn you out for 2 weeks and make it a little tougher. That's definitely not sweeping, but definitely something I've heard from my friends in those industries. The best way to learn what firms are doing what is just to reach out to people. I have a ton of people just hit me up on LinkedIn and say, hey, you have 20 minutes to chat about your experience at Artisan at EcoAct, and give me like the real stuff about it, because you're not going to learn anything from the website about how a company actually is, not even their business, like let alone their company culture. So definitely connecting with people, NESCAC, Bowdoin, high school friends, anything you can, even just cold call LinkedIn's have worked for me, is definitely the most important. But yeah, it's a tough balance to hit. Like I would prepare, to be honest. Like my last suggestion would be, when you're choosing a role, make sure you're into it and make sure you're interested, because I wasn't expecting this job to be as hard as it's been. But I'm okay with it being hard just because I like the subject matter a lot more than I probably did in my last role. Whereas if I had been working that hard in my last role, I definitely would have quit earlier. So yeah, try to be stoked on what you're doing.
That's great. Shane, go ahead.
Was there a reason besides like the few hours of work that you were experiencing with your first job to cause you to shift to go into sustainability, or was there like a different reason that pushed you towards that field rather than healthcare?
Yeah, great question. I'm sure, as you guys will see too, a couple of years out of grad, people start to switch jobs and make realizations on what they want to do. Yeah, I think when I graduated Bowdoin, I had pretty much all healthcare and that kind of biology research background. So really the only consulting gigs that gave me interviews were healthcare consulting firms. I kind of originally, in a weird way, and wouldn't recommend it, kind of planned. I was like, oh, yeah, I can try consulting out. If I like it, I can transition on the skills rather than the industry knowledge to sustainability, which is what I thought I originally wanted to get into. So a little bit was planning. COVID derailed that a little bit, kept me there a little longer. Part of it, though, too, was I think I was a little naive a bit to the healthcare consulting I was doing. I was I was a little more pitched that it was kind of helping get cancer drugs to patients rather than helping large pharmaceutical companies make more money, which, you know, they can go hand in hand for sure. But the projects I was working on mostly were kind of getting more money there rather than helping get the drugs to patients. So for me, definitely like having a purpose in my job is really important because you're spending so many hours a day doing it. So I think that was definitely the biggest reason I left. I loved all the people there and the work-life balance was nice. So I missed that. Yeah, go for it again.
Sorry, follow-up question. How did you like discover EcoAct, and how was that shift from going from healthcare to EcoAct specifically, or like how did you find that network that led you to that specific company?
Yeah, totally. Pretty lucky, and I probably didn't do it in the best way as most people would recommend. This April, I just kind of decided I got on a trip with some friends again. A lot of the remote work, like a lot of people kind of work together in locations and then just hang out. And so, yeah, I just kind of decided to quit. A couple of my friends had done it without a job, which was bold, but it gave me a lot of time to just start networking and Googling around for what actually, I knew that sustainability consulting existed, but I didn't really know what it was. And yeah, I just hit up a lot of different people. There's definitely more organized ways. I actually worked with someone who is kind of like a career coach person for sustainability that I heard on a podcast that kind of showed me how to organize spreadsheets to like reach out to people, send them messages, hear back from them, and then apply to jobs, which is a grind, but definitely important for learning about what you're actually going to do. I came into this role knowing pretty much what I was going to do. The way that the connection that kind of broke through for me, because it was definitely, I don't have much experience in sustainability. Most of the people at my firm have masters or PhDs in it or related topics. Was just a friend of a friend. I was just doing a backpacking trip with a friend and grabbed a beer with this high school friend, and he had just started it at EcoAct. So definitely a pretty lucky role. I wouldn't recommend doing it how I do it. I'd definitely do a more comprehensive, organized search and then quit your job. But so it goes.
Other questions? Yeah, Anna.
Do you have any advice for someone who thinks that they want to do consulting but just not sure like what kind of like sector would be best, whether it is like healthcare, sustainability, human capital, like or management, and like what kind of like are the main difference, like just how like you would find what you think you'd be most interested in or like best
Absolutely. at? Yeah. I mean, a lot of my friends that were interested in a lot of different things that didn't know exactly what they wanted to do, you know, consulting, I always say, is kind of like an intro class to whatever you're in. It gets you into the field. It gets you to see a ton of different clients in the field that are working there. So if you want to take an intro class in sustainability, you can by working at a sustainability firm. But if you're not even sure what sector you want to focus on, that's where those bigger firms that are more generalists can be great. You know, you can work on one client just by trial and error, see if you like it or not. You know, you don't like the forest and ag space. So then you go on to a healthcare client and you end up liking that. And you can kind of branch out from there. And I know a lot of my friends that, you know, Accenture, EY and stuff like that have definitely followed that path because they're more unsure after college, if that helps.
Yeah, larger firms. We'll do Hollis and then Lauren.
I was just wondering, you kind of talked about how a lot of your work is sort of solo work, and then you go into like team meetings and stuff, but are there more aspects of sort of collaboration and teamwork, or is that kind of like one firm compared to another kind of culture, or like how do you kind of, or is that just sort of the nature of consulting, is it a little bit more individual work? But yeah, I kind of just wondering about that dynamic, because I feel like I would like be more excited to work in a more collaborative environment. But I'm not sure if that's sort of like firm by firm, or if that's just sort of the nature of consulting.
Yeah, another great question. You guys are killing it. Yeah, definitely. First thing I'll say is it kind of depends what you want. You know, when I started managing people at Artisan, when I was working back then, I do a lot of working sessions with people where we just block out an hour in our day and do work together on a project so that we could just collaborate live. Other people liked, you know, spending solo time for an hour and coming out to a meeting and just talking through their findings. So you definitely can influence it. I'd say it definitely depends. One thing that's honestly changed it has been remote work. it's a little easier to just stop by someone's desk, to be honest, than just to throw on a call. It's just people are away from their computers more and stuff. So I felt at this firm where I've been fully remote and I only go in probably once or twice a week, I've definitely felt that I've done less collaboration, and I'm doing more solo work and scheduling meetings to talk with people than in person, where I just kind of problem shoot over desks instead of Teams messages. So yeah, it does also, I will say, collaboration does depend on firms. This is something that's great to ask people in your, informational interview calls, because some firms I have heard, I haven't had the experience, are kind of competitive, where there's a certain number of promotions and people are kind of vying for those. Definitely not the case at either of my firms, and people, were extremely open to collaborating and helping each other out. But definitely an important thing to ask people while you're there. But yeah, definitely varies from firm to firm. I just ask what typical days, what your typical day looks like, and try and get like an hour estimate of how many time are you sitting at your desk alone versus talking with people is a good way to do it.
Lauren, go ahead.
For this summer, I'm trying to get an environmental consulting internship in the DC area, but I'm having some trouble navigating and finding a lot of internship and entry-level positions at some firms. What do you think the benefits would be of working for like the Department of Agriculture, or just like the State Department in general, in an environmental field, and then pursue more of like a consulting gig in the future?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question. I guess first, just to preface it, environmental consulting and sustainability consulting are very new. Environmental consulting, more like, there's like, no one knows like what to actually call it. I'll say environmental consulting is more like engineers going out to fields to make sure that they can test the groundwater and make sure that a project is good for development, where sustainability, I'll say, is more, helping companies reach net zero. But that's just, everyone has different jargon for that. So on the sustainability side, where I work, it's really new. People just haven't cared about it in the US until the last 10 years. A lot of companies from Europe have started to move over here as businesses try. So people, because it's so new, there's not really an established pipeline of people that have amazing skills, perfect resumes, and stuff like that. So for me, coming from something that's pretty completely unrelated, was still able to transition eventually after a lot of networking. So definitely hope. And my point on that is, if you can do anything related to what you're interested in, whether it be agriculture more, or, I'm trying to think of other specific sustainability things, greenhouse gas accounting. If you can do anything that you're particularly interested in the sustainability or environmental space that can transition over, that's a great experience. And especially if you frame that experience on your resume, as kind of talked about before, as a consulting thing. So when you get your project as an intern at the Department of Agriculture, try and frame it like you were running a consulting project of, here's the problem, here's my research, and here's the solution I presented out. And that's really about as good as experience as people can get, because this field's so new. I had a lot of friends. The friend who got me in worked at the California Department for like electric vehicles for 2 years before this, and transitioned in plenty fine. Yeah, good question.
And maybe in the chat as well, with how hard the work is, would you say the compensation is decent? Decent is up for, interpretation, but whatever you want to say, you're comfortable in that realm.
Yeah, totally. No, it's something I wish people were more transparent about, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, consulting's definitely a good gig in terms of the rest of, we've just been talking about the work, but the work-life balance. The hours can be long depending where you're at, but if you can get a remote job, you can live wherever, which is nice. And then they do pay well generally. So it depends pretty heavily across companies and industries. So the analysts at my sustainability firm get paid definitely less than the ones that when I was working at my healthcare consulting firm, just because there's more money in big pharma than there is in sustainability. So when you're kind of choosing what firms you want to live at, and also you're probably going to get paid more at McKinsey than you are at a smaller boutique firm where the work-life balance is better. So when you're making these kind of decisions about what you want your post-grad life to look like, definitely trying to come up with a number, just a range of like how much money you think you need would be super helpful. And kind of also how much money, you know, you hope to make by 30 or 40. I've definitely seen people go into less lucrative careers that weren't totally ready for that, whether it be like a high school teacher or something, and had kind of wished that they had thought about it a little bit more. And I've seen other people chase just as much money as they can get, and regretted that as well in banking or private equity, and not really having a purpose for their work, but just money. So yeah, something to think about. But honestly, if you use Glassdoor, I think is like the company where you can kind of see salaries online of, if you make an account or something, of different companies, and also like asking people in their informational interviews just a general like, where can I find salary information, not maybe asking them straight up how much they make, is a good way to go.
Yeah, I've been seeing entry-level offers in the 80s for like healthcare and tech in larger cities, and then I've seen 70s as well. Could be even like high 60s for more of like an in-house advisory position, where it's like mini consulting at like a Big Four or something. But I think if you're doing something more tech or healthcare, but I would feel comfortable saying most of the roles would be in the 70s and then others in the 80s, depending on location and how technical the role is.
Yeah, it's nice when also promotions can happen pretty quickly. So, you know, those salaries.
Plus there's sign-on bonuses.
Yeah, that also helps
just base salary is all I'm talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah, bonuses can play. At my last firm, my bonus was like up to 25% of my base salary. So they can be pretty big, not as big as in like finance, but definitely can play a big role in your money.
What other questions do we have?
Yeah, great questions so far, seriously.
Type in the chat, yeah. You can type in the chat, raise your hand. I'll wait a moment. All right. Go ahead, Shane, and then Aidan, if you have any closing thoughts after that, go ahead.
Yeah, totally.
I'm just wondering, you're talking about these like projects to help companies reach zero emissions. Like, what's like one possibly specific topic that you were researching? Like, and you said that you do a lot of that work solo. Like, I'm wondering a little more about the specifics of what your research entails.
Yeah, definitely. So right now, just the projects I've worked on, since being here, the kind of base that we want all our analysts to get really comfortable with is understanding how to develop a carbon footprint for a company. So there's a really long and academics, scientists have put together really a giant framework for how you can account for a business, government, whatever, any entity, how much carbon they're releasing into the atmosphere. So the first order of business that I've spent a lot of my time on is learning how to footprint companies and learning how to divide up their emissions into different categories called scopes. And then from there, talk about, all the strategies that we can use to reduce them. Definitely one cool part that I haven't totally mentioned that's a little more of like the fun stuff for me is, apart from just that greenhouse gas accounting, and then getting into modeling to show how you can reduce that specifically. So, purchasing renewable energy credits to reduce your, power emissions. Another cool part of the sustainability consulting is companies are starting to care about more sustainability issues as well. So sustainable packaging, biodiversity loss, things like that. So I've been lucky enough to go to a couple conferences over the last month talking about some of those issues, and the frameworks, to be honest, are still being developed. They're coming out, a year ago for biodiversity, for example, that companies are now going to try to report on, how are they limiting deforestation in their plants? How are they securing like endangered species rights in the places they work? And so some of that stuff that's more sustainability focused and isn't really driving our revenue at the company yet, but will in the next 5 to 10 years, is definitely some of the cooler things that keep me into it. Sorry for that roundabout way of answering that question.
No, that was a good answer.
Go.
I was wondering, like, how much of a role does like an economic background play in consulting? Like, would you say it's helpful to have like an econ major?
It's a great question. Yeah, should touch on that. So I have absolutely no econ experience, finance experience. when I came to Artisan, my first role, there was like 8 of us that started, and half of us were more from that finance econ background and half of us were from the scientific. So I think it's probably more common for people to have it in the bigger firms just as generalists, because you're translating not on your knowledge of the space, but knowledge on finance and topics like that. But for me, I had absolutely none of it, and it was definitely, it's been sometimes a challenge to learn, but not really. A lot of it's pretty intuitive, and whenever you're at these roles, they don't just throw you to the fire. They show you how to do things, they explain it to you. And well, I probably had to do a little more solo research to understand some of these things, learn how to look through a 10K or understand general principles. It was honestly harder for the other people that didn't understand the science sometimes, just because some of that stuff can be tricky. So really not a worry at all. And I know a lot of people that came in with no economic background. So yeah.
Wait, okay, cool. I have a follow-up question for that.
Go ahead.
Would you say to get into sustainability consulting that like then doing more like environmental research would be a better path than doing like some sort of like finance thing?
It's a good question, because it's so new. Like I could give you what would be the ideal path for like a healthcare consultant, just because that field's been around for so many years and people kind of know what they want. For sustainability, I think most of the people that work at my firm either came from another sustainability company in Europe or abroad. I think like 2/3 of our company is like dual citizens somewhere. So that we're doing it somewhere else, now they're coming here. The other ones went and got a master's. There's kind of a lot of really common master's programs for sustainability are popping up, mostly in Columbia. Actually, is like the huge one where like half the people you'll meet in the whole sustainability realm just went to Columbia for a different environmental master's or sustainability management master's. But other than that, they came from really all aspects of sustainability work. So as I said, my friend worked for electric vehicles. So he works on, transportation clients when he can, like General Motors or something, to like work with them to encourage their sustainability policy. But I wish I had I think it's really more just about how you frame it. If you work in more like really scientific work, like, you're doing field research, for geology or something, that might be a little bit harder than transitioning on professional skills like a consulting role, for the Department of Agriculture or something, just because what people are looking for right now in the space is just people who are good workers. And they can teach them all the knowledge along the way, but they're just looking for someone who's a good communicator and can work hard and wants to be in the space. So I'd probably lean that way than just the really hard science research, but I've seen it go both ways too.
Absolutely. We'll do Perrin and then Hollis, and then we have to wrap up. Go ahead, Perrin.
How much? I feel like with consulting, the balance is always like how much is, like you said, for healthcare consulting, how much is just making your companies more money versus how much is like doing what you would think would be the good thing. Mm-hmm. Do you like not sugarcoating it? Like, do you actually think that sustainability consulting is like doing something good, or is it more just making it so that big companies can, like, I'm not going against it at all. I'm just like asking if you internally think that, what's the
no, well, one of the best parts of my job, I know it's a delicate question to ask. One of the best parts of my job is everyone at the job has pretty much explicitly said they're trying this out to see if it's all BS, to see if these companies actually do it. It's so new that no one knows. So I've had, talks with everyone who started from the very top of the company to the analysts like me that are like, oh no, I'm here to just see if it works, to see if we actually do stuff after 2 years. The nice part about consulting is if it doesn't work, if you, 2 years, honestly, like I kind of maybe did with healthcare, become a little disillusioned and want to leave. The nice part about entering the space is that you now have a pretty solid grasp, as I said, kind of an intro class to the whole space, at least on the private sector, of where you can go, and even foundations and things and nonprofits as well, specifically with sustainability, that people you've networked with, people that you've worked with, where if you think, Patagonia is doing a great job for sustainability, you know, people will just leave our sustainability consulting firm and go work with them and be on their team because they've done all the skills that they needed to learn it. So it's almost like a backup plan. If this is all Fugazi, like you can still move, and it gives you a lot of options, which is, I think, for a procrastinator a little bit like me on big decisions is nice. So yeah, great question. It's a tough one to ask, to be honest.
All right, go ahead, Hollis.
I was just going to ask a question that kind of followed up Lulu's question about what kind of research experience is helpful, and like what kind of is, and I know what research is, but sort of what do you mean when you talk about like doing research, and how can you build that experience up? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You mean it just like another role, or do you mean like the hard science research I was talking about? Sorry, I'm mixing up questions.
Like kind of both of that.
Yeah. Really what I mean when I'm talking about doing research at a role, like a business role in any regard, is it's just like kind of writing a paper. Just when you want to make a thesis, you want to come up with an answer to a question. So, you know, you're using normally publicly available resources for a lot of consulting, or some private ones. But really, if you can frame anything as a problem and you coming up with a solution, that's what the framing is. For like the kind of hardcore science research, I guess, that I was talking about too, like that's more of a, you know, if you're in the sciences, like that's more like field work kind of stuff, where you'd be kind of pursuing a PhD later on, I guess, is fair question. Am I getting close there? Sorry.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering about the PhD aspect, sort of like more formal research. Like, do a lot of people kind of pursue that, or is it kind of more like that intro, like public research of sort of like more general stuff? Because I feel like the PhD is like a very kind of daunting track to go on to.
6-7 years, yeah, it definitely is daunting. Well, I first think, before I answer that, it's just trying to describe everyone's background in this space is tough because they're so varied. The best thing, I think, is honestly to just look at people that you find interesting on LinkedIn in this space, you know, if you're into sustainability. So I was just Googling like literally keywords like nature and sustainability on LinkedIn for, you know, within the Bowdoin like network, and just seeing what came up, and people did all sorts of stuff from working as solar companies and stuff like that, and just seeing which one speaks to you and their specific background, because consulting's so general, people's backgrounds, and this one's so new that everyone's just like scattered. I can't even pick out many patterns. For the PhD work, there's actually like jobs that are more, they're in the private sector, but they're for experts who are PhDs. So like BCG is this like thing that I've known a couple friends that have gone after their PhD, where it's like an expert, internal expert consultancy, where the more general consultants who know what they're talking about, but not like the hard science of cancer biology, for example, go to the PhDs and say, hey, my client's got a drug who attaches to this receptor, blah, 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 tell me more. And they tell them what's up. So there's definitely like a place for PhDs, but it's not, most PhDs don't just go right into a generalist consulting role. There's some, but don't like start an analyst role that a lot of us after graduation just go into. Yeah.
So helpful. Great questions. Nice work. Aidan, I didn't prep them at all. Okay. All right, everyone. I just wanted to thank you all for coming tonight. If you could unmute, and round of applause for Aidan so we can hear you clapping, because it's awkward on Zoom. Thank you, Aidan. We really appreciate you being here tonight. If folks want to circle back with you, what's a good way to stay connected?
Yeah. I'd honestly hit me up on LinkedIn. I think they have like an alumni network thing. Maybe I have my email.
Are you on the spreadsheet on there too?
On the spreadsheet, is there like an alumni?
Yeah, or are you on just like the alumni network? So let's just go with LinkedIn.
One of those two, but probably easier to just take a screenshot of my name and hit me up.
Perfect.
Yeah. Let me know if you want to talk about anything from general stuff, healthcare, or specifically sustainability. But thank you for all the great questions. Really awesome to see the interest.
Thank you. And I just want to quickly plug, next Tuesday, we have one more What is Consulting event. It's going to be a little more generalist, but also for like a global lens. So he's worked in like Saudi Arabia and Malaysia, and now works for Visa now, but had worked for Booz Allen before and other companies, and just really interesting pathway. So if you're still just sort of exploring consulting and trying to wrap your head around these different like ways that it could show up in different industries and sectors, it's on Handshake, RSVP, 7 p.m. next Tuesday. That'll be our last one for the semester. So thanks again, everyone. Take care. Sorry again for being late. I'm going to stop the recording.